evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate music in London. My name is Megan Dykstra. I am one of the members of the Board of Directors for the Canadian Club of London, and we're pleased to host you this evening at Huron University for a night of music to really kick off the holiday season. Tonight we are welcoming many special guests, so I hope you're all very excited for everything we have in store for you. So you would have just heard from some of our opera singers, Angelique and Alyssa, as well as their accompanist, Nathan. We have a panel of speakers, including Mario Cercelli, Jeremy Wright, and Kelly Austin. And following our formal program, a quartet of musicians from London Symphonia. On behalf of the Canadian Club of London, we would like to thank London Symphonia for joining us this evening and donating this evening's door prize, the winners for which will be announced at 6:30 p.m., as well as Donaldson Heating and Cooling for sponsoring tonight's event. At this time, I will invite Dr. Jeff Reed, Dean of Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and Provost at Huron University, to say a few words as our season sponsor.
Thank you, Megan. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Huron and this lovely new theater that we constructed just a couple of years ago. It's a real pleasure to have everyone here. Even though we are an intimate crowd, it'll be a lovely evening, I'm sure. I just want to talk very quickly about the synergy that we see between Huron and the Canadian Club. Huron is committed to obviously offering an elite education, but it's also an accessible education and one with a social mission to create leaders with heart. And we think the kind of work that the Canadian Club does is vital to that sort of vision of Canadian society, one of an educated and well-engaged populace. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all the good work that the Canadian Club does. So Huron is very proud to be the sole educational sponsor of the Canadian Club Speaker Series. And again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with the Canadian Club moving forward. Thank you very much.
So at this time, we are going to get our formal program started. So I will invite our panelists and our moderator, Dave Farrow, who is the president of the Canadian Club of London, to the stage, as well as our three panelists can join us here as well.
We've got a great panel here to talk about music in London and celebrate music in London. Kelly Austin is here. Kelly, I want to get your official title correct here. You are the Director of Marketing and Assistant General Manager at Budweiser Gardens, correct? Yes. Responsible for booking all the content in the venue, in addition to seeing all aspects of marketing and group experiences. All of the content, there's a lot of content that goes through that building.
There is. We're very lucky in all the acts that we're able to bring in. So myself, along with our general manager, are responsible for bringing in the talent and the great events that hopefully everyone's been out to enjoy.
Yeah, and for those that don't realize it, Budweiser Gardens consistently ranks in the top 10 in attendance of all venues in Canada.
We do. So we compete with a lot of larger venues, those NHL-sized arenas, and we're very blessed in what we've brought in, and we've been able to compete and do very well.
That's awesome. Jeremy Wright is here. Jeremy's an entertainment lawyer. What is an entertainment lawyer, for those that don't know?
It faces in two directions. There's a lot of dull stuff that I find really interesting that artists might find dull, but really, primarily, it's business support. The entertainment space is somewhat unique in that you get a lot of people doing performances that might not even realize they're an ad hoc business operating that. And so legal support kind of greases the wheels, can help your business grow, can also analyze risk for you and flag things that you should maybe be considering.
Right. After over a decade of performing and production experience around North America and internationally, you got your law degree at Osgoode Hall in 2022. And then being called to the bar, after being called to the bar, he started his very own firm, Third Bird Legal, correct? Focuses on entertainment law and caters to the needs of independent artists, creators, and entrepreneurs. Welcome. And Mario Cercelli is here. Mario, broadcast journalist, a documentary filmmaker, communications expert, a musician. How many
I'm a failed musician.
He has produced and or engineered over 45 records, and compilation albums over his career. He worked in the radio and television industry for over 20 years as a reporter, newscaster, and radio station manager. You were with A Channel and CTV London for many, many years. And now, as a communications industry, or in the communications industry, as a government and community outreach specialist. His official title is the manager of the Youth Program and Digital Creative Arts Center with the Boys and Girls Club of London, correct?
It is.
All right. So let's start here. Where is the London music scene? Is it growing? Is it stagnant? Is it shrinking? Kelly, what do you think? Where are we in London with the music scene?
I mean, I definitely think the music scene is growing everywhere from the education side of things, the grassroots. I think the outdoor festivals, there's a great new comedy festival. It might not be music, but it's entertainment. They announced some of the acts this morning. The London Music Office is doing some incredible work to help facilitate that growth within the city. So I definitely think we're at a time where, we're really seeing all aspects of the industry grow and thrive.
Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd chime in on that. I've had the luxury of being able to see a few different municipalities, cities in Ontario, and how they approach the music industry. What really impresses me about London is that everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction. We've got a lot of support from the city itself and the institutions, like Huron College here today. Everyone is kind of invested and making that decision to be a part of something and make it big, which is really exciting. I do get the feeling that we're kind of on the verge of something here.
Yeah. Mario, I'll give you the tough question. I know we do a lot of things well in London when it comes to the music community. What are the things that we can't seem to get right? If we really want it to grow, what are some things that we need to do better as a community?
That is a tough question. I think really it's supporting each other, and it's supporting each other on different levels. I mean, what Kelly and the good folks at the Bud Gardens do is drastically different than what we try to do at the Forest City London Music Awards and London Music Hall of Fame. But I think if we can sort of merge those two goals together, attracting world-class talent to London, and at the same time growing from the ground up a music scene, I think that's something that we should strive for.
Yeah. This is going to sound like a strange question. I ask lots of them. Why is a thriving music industry important for a city? What do you think, Jeremy? Why is it so important?
So many reasons. I mean, honestly, me growing up, in my entire lifetime, it's always been a conflict about music programs in schools. Are they important? Are they not? And I've had the benefit of seeing that really argued on both sides, one side more than other, I would suggest. That there's no question that music education is a really huge part of education of a populace. Yeah. And so being able to take advantage of world-class talent, as you say, just having it, you go to a European city and often in the summer you'll hear 3 orchestras competing for your attention. It just changes the way you view your life. And I know that sounds like a grand sweeping statement, but I stand behind it firmly. It changes everything.
Kelly, what do you think?
I mean, a lot of the same sentiments. I think music provides the soundtrack of your life. Was it Casey Kasem who said that? But really, it has the ability to bring people together. It has the ability to touch people in ways that other things don't. And I just, I think it provides a lot of different opportunities, within the community on all sorts of ranges. And it just adds so much to people's lives.
Yeah. And the spin-off factors, the economic benefits to the community. I think of Budweiser Gardens. When did Budweiser Gardens first open?
2002.
2002. So how many shows do you think you've had through there in the last 21 years?
A lot.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have a number, but it's been a lot, and the range of shows that we've had come through is quite diverse as well.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say there's been tens of millions of dollars generated in spin-off economic benefit for London, correct?
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's something at our facility, whether it's the Junos that came in 2019 or it's a small Broadway show, we hear it from the local restaurants downtown that, reservations are up, which means there's more staff working. Suppliers are, they're buying more from suppliers. There's a whole chain that goes along with it, more than what you just think. And then, you look at hotels and beds and heads and that aspect of it as well, transportation. There really is a whole ecosystem that benefits from the music industry.
Yeah. Mario, anything to add to that?
Well, I think music is so important for all the obvious reasons. As Kelly said, it's a soundtrack of our lives. Sometimes a song can take you back in time and fix an experience. It's also the universal language. But I'd like to kind of pull it all together and say, like, music as part of arts and culture is a sector that we really need to, as a society, determine and say to us, that's important, and tie it into the education. And make sure that kids in elementary school are getting training, and kids in high school are exposed to that, and make the arts, music as well, as part of it, accessible to people. Let's face it, here's the example. We had COVID, it was a lockdown. What got us through it? Music, books, cinema. And yet as a society, unless we can monetize it, it's not so important. So it may take a bit of a paradigm shift, but music is, not just to me, obviously this entire crowd, uniquely profound to us.
Has the local industry recovered from COVID yet?
Kelly?
I'll let you start on that one.
It depends who you're talking to. I mean, venues are, they're hurting in our city.
Yeah.
They're doing their best, and a lot of organizations are hurting too. We just recently heard of Home County, which has been around for decades, folding up the camp. We could do better. We could do better, but I'm hopeful.
Right. I know there's some big shows that will be coming to Budweiser Gardens in the next 12 months or so. Without getting too deep into it, explain to the audience why concert tickets are going up to buy a ticket. It's not Budweiser Gardens' fault.
No, it's not. It's demand for those concerts. The artists, the same as us during COVID, were pent up, and they were making a lot of music, and they were anxious to get back out on the road. So you're seeing a lot of that. I mean, costs of a lot of things are going up. So the gas to get the trucks, wages have gone up. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. We'll see how much longer they keep going up and when that sort of evens off. But there's some inflation in there, but there's a lot of tours out there as well.
Yeah. And Jeremy, from touring and playing.
I mean, we could be 2 hours just on this alone, I think.
And the impact of technology on the whole music sector.
Absolutely, but I mean, even staying just with the idea of the venues and the inflation, you go to the grocery store, you grumble, but you're still paying it. There's a reluctance, I think often music is viewed as a luxury, and it's really not, but at the ground level, at each individual purchase, the consumer, on average, is probably cutting that from what they're doing. But having said that, there's another trend, which, and no disrespect to the work done at Budweiser Gardens, this is not the place that I'm talking about, but there is one performing arts center in Ontario that bravely puts its financials publicly online, as you can go see. And I came honestly by this because I was renting theaters to put on shows, and so you got a sense of how they do their finances. And every year this center spends more on arts administration than on the artist fees itself. And I think that's been a gradual change. But you know, I'm a member of the AFM in Canada, the Musicians Union. The minimum hasn't really changed, I think. You can still, if you've got a band where a band leader and then side musicians, I think the side musician minimum is still under, yeah, $80. That's absurd. And I think my concern is the way this trickles down, it's not so much about are people buying the $70, $80 tickets. I think to a certain extent they always will. It's when a musician says, well, hang on, now I'm worth $500 a night. And people are going, wait, I can't pay 80 anymore? That's the friction that I'm worried about. And I think that's a conversation to be had.
And I think too, because the whole industry has changed, there was a time when you could make music and make a good living
Right.
on the sale
You
of
could
physical.
sell albums,
Physical.
which doesn't happen anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
So now, for an artist to make a decent salary, you've got to be out performing because you're not monetizing those physical sales, and we all know that streaming isn't adding up, and maybe you saw some of the statistics that came out yesterday with respect to Spotify.
Now, Spotify is another 2-hour talk, because Spotify was something, and I think it's endemic to the music industry. Spotify was such a good idea, and you know, it's meant to be democratized radio. But in order for anyone to flourish on a grand scale in the music industry, you need the support of the big players, and that's where the wheels came off. You know, people don't understand, if you were played on the radio, that came through as royalties. If you stream on Spotify, that's called a sale. And what that means is that it doesn't go directly to the artist, it goes into a slush fund that the label can pilfer from. You know, you talk about musicians earning their keep from touring. COVID obviously threw a wrench in that.
Sure did.
But the number one thing that we saw happen right away, I think it was May of 2020, was Live Nation completely overturning their artist agreement, so that in the event Live Nation canceled your show, you only got 25% of your guarantee instead of 100%, which right there, you're not even paying your bills. And if the artist canceled, if they were antsy about COVID and going out and not sure about it, not only would they return the guarantee, but they'd owe a 100% penalty. And so as venues closed down and Live Nation opened up, you know, history in Toronto, for example, we're turning into a monolithic industry, and that is not helping the $80 a night musicians.
Yeah.
You talked about the number of people that need to be paid out of that slush fund. An entertainment lawyer is one of those people.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
why does a musician
Don't feel guilty.
why does a musician need an entertainment lawyer?
Why do they need a phone? I mean, at a certain extent, it's a cost of doing business. I think most of what I see is a legal problem that people now need to get out of. That can be solved by a little bit of front-end work.
Right.
Often when someone gets a contract, the temptation is to think of it like your cell phone contract and take it and say, I guess this is what it is, and sign it and move on. You can really push back, and often the other party will ask for the moon, and when you write back and say, I'm not happy about that, sometimes they will walk away, but then, you know, was that a deal you wanted to really go through with? But you can often negotiate and get something out of it. It's tough to do that if you don't understand what the contract actually says, though.
A lot of music contracts were written on the back of cocktail napkins in the 60s and 70s. So you're suggesting not to do that anymore, I guess.
People need to be aware. Often you think you have to sign a contract. There was a case recently that found that a thumbs up emoji was sufficient to find that there was an agreement. You need components to make a contract. That doesn't always need to be on a piece of 11 by 14 paper that you sign. So that's the other side of it too, is making sure that you're not committing to things that you'd rather not.
Interesting. For those that don't know, our city of London was designated in 2021 as a UNESCO City of Music. UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. London was Canada's first city to be designated. What does this mean for each of you? What does this designation mean? How's it going to benefit us? Kelly?
I mean, for us, I think, you know, we collaborate with Corey Crossman in the London Music Office and Tourism London on a whole variety of things. But, you know, I've seen the notion of, or the hope, I should say, that with this designation, music will stay in the forefront of all Londoners' minds. So if you own a small business and you're putting on a party or you're doing something, you will have a local musician come play at it. Like, how do we incorporate music into everything that we do? And it's something that I've heard over and over, and you're starting to see more of it, and I think it's amazing. For Budweiser Gardens, there's a lot of different things that we do, but it's also another aspect when we're looking to bring in these big shows. It's something that we're talking to the promoters about. So, we're mentioning the UNESCO designation and what it means. We have a plaque that sits outside of the green room where a lot of the tour folks are, and they walk by. So for us, it's just another reason as to why they need to come and play London.
Right. So do you think we'll actually get more shows into London because of this designation, Mario?
I'm not certain about that. I think if we look at the Bud Gardens and that organization, they do an exceptional job currently of attracting world-class talent to London and making it available to the community. Will more artists come here because of that designation? I don't know. That's a question for Kelly to answer. When you're approaching artists or trying to nail down a tour, is that at the top of the list outside of the fee that you're going to arrange?
I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily at the top of the list, but when Corey's bringing in different conferences and they're exposed to Budweiser Gardens, we've done tours with some folks. You never know where that person's going to be, and they may end up on a tour and helping with routing, and that may be something that sticks out in their mind if they have to make a decision between going to London and going to Hamilton. Is that the deciding factor? Maybe not, but maybe it's one of those factors that decides that they come. So I think it's a great thing for the city.
Jeremy, what does it mean for you?
A couple of things. Number one, it means the city is not paying lip service to music. I mean, cynically perhaps, but I understand how much paperwork something like that would have required and how much time it would have required. And that's, to me, it says it's not lip service. Every show that comes through the gardens or through a theater, anything like that needs to work with the city to make that show happen, and it shows that the city's on board. The other thing, though, is that, Folk Music Ontario has a conference in London. Musicians come from around the world, actually, to showcase here and develop Canadian touring ideas. Some people are surprised, but the UNESCO City of Music in the US is Kansas City. And Folk Music Ontario sends out e-blasts and says that through grants, they're sponsoring a contingent from Canada to go to Kansas City to their festival there. So I think the public might not see it, but the city will see music coming through from international locales, which is really exciting, I think.
Yeah. So for people who want to get involved in the music industry, they want a job in the industry, what do they do? Where do you suggest they start, Mario? They want to get into it.
Well, it probably starts early, with early education. I, at the risk of sounding sappy, I think a lot of it is it's a vocation, it's a calling. Yeah. Music isn't something that you just decide, well, let me see, I'll be a doctor or a musician. Which one? People who are involved in the music business are individuals who are passionate about music, and that starts early in life through education. So we're fortunate in London to have the Music Industry Arts program at Fanshawe College, the Independent Ontario Institute of Recording Arts Technology, OIART, is here. You heard earlier some students from the Don Wright Faculty of Music. So we've definitely got the educational base. It's what we try to do at the Digital Creative Arts Center, is inspire young folks to engage in music, whether it's passively to listen or to take it into a participatory situation where you're actively getting music instruction or music games and developing an appreciation for it. That's what we try to do at the Digital Creative Arts Center.
Jeremy, what advice do you have for people wanting to get into it?
I used to perform on cruise ships, and I remember I was coming from the ship to the airport, and there was a taxi driver, I think it was Aruba, and I had my guitars on my back, and the taxi driver said, "You perform on the ship?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That's amazing, it's so important. You know, I've got my kids, my son, my daughter. My son wants to be a lawyer, my daughter wants to be a teacher." I said, "That's fine, you go to school, become a lawyer, become a teacher, but you make sure you have your music to fall back on." And that blew my mind. I'd push back just a little bit on what Mario said, that it doesn't have to be that way. I've been told so many times by people in the music industry, if there's anything else you can do, go do it. That's a shame to me. And I'm not quite sure that this is going to boil down to a soundbite for aspiring musicians, except that we have to do better. We have to make room for people for whom music is their calling, but who are bright and can do other things. We have to make room for people who want to create and want to build community. We cannot allow the stereotypical gatekeeper, scarcity mindset stereotype to win the day.
Well said.
I think we see things similarly, though.
Absolutely.
It's so making it easy for folks to get into the music business or to become a musician starts with society basically appreciating and assessing value to music and the art form, and making it worthwhile so that you can, you know, in the final analysis, put food on the table and a roof over your head, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Kelly, for those that want to get into the business side of it, a director of marketing, booking acts, what do you suggest? What advice do you have?
You know, I think it's really just looking at, well, being open to, you know, being in finance and being in the music industry. It's being open to, maybe it's not the traditional being the musician and being on center stage, but it's some of those behind the scenes types of positions. And really it's just starting, you know, ask people to go out for a coffee and just having those conversations, learning how people got their start, making those connections, and then really figuring out what part of the industry it is that you're interested in and pursuing it that way.
I guess we can't talk about music in 2023 without talking about AI, artificial intelligence. There's been a lot of talk lately about how you no longer have to even know how to play a guitar because AI will do it for you. Or you don't even have to know how to write a song because AI will do it for you. A lot of musicians are making full albums in their basement, all by themselves. Is AI good for the future of the music industry, or is it going to do irreparable damage? Who wants that one first?
I'm punting. Go, Jeremy.
Well, respectfully, I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy. I mean, it's here. Whether it's good or bad is somewhat beside the point. It's probably going to do irreparable harm. But again, it comes in waves, you know. I mean, it wasn't AI in the 1700s, but it was, you know, as opera went out of fashion at the end of the 1700s, things changed. You know, people talk about early 1900s was a golden age for music because everyone knew how to make music, and people would have ensembles in their front room. And so people would then go to see the orchestras of the day perform, and they'd all be appreciating and analyzing. And I think we've gotten away from that. I think the audience is generally probably less educated about music than they were in that golden age. And so, you know, things are shrinking down a little bit, but will rise up. I mean, I just think there's going to be a backlash about AI, and I think perhaps optimistically, but I don't think it's going to take over the music industry. I think it might co-opt some portion of it. But
yeah. The Beatles released a new song 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was done through AI. They found
John Lennon's parts.
John Lennon's parts, and through AI, put out a new song. And Paul McCartney was right behind it. He thought it was a great idea. What do you think?
Being a huge Beatles fan, it was great to hear that. I'm concerned. I'm worried about AI. I'm worried about where musicians used to be able to get contracts to score a movie, now it'll be done by AI. Musicians used to get opportunities to pen a song for a toothpaste commercial, now it'll be AI.
Right.
So are we ready as a society to hear music that was not written and performed by another human being? Are we okay with that? And I kind of liken that to the Pro Tools on steroids. You're familiar with Pro Tools. Pro Tools is a recording software that allows you to correct every blemish in a performance. So if you can't sing well, that's okay, we'll auto-tune it. For those of you who are familiar with a band called Toto, Steve Lukather, who was a studio musician by the time he was 18, and just a prolific musician, recently said, before there were Pro Tools, there were musicians. And are we going to say that about AI?
I did just want to jump in quickly. So the AI for the Beatles song was to isolate Lennon's voice from the piano. It wasn't about writing the song or anything like that. So that was a different technical application. But also, I'm a big David Bowie fan. His first song that got mainstream appeal was Space Oddity. It was a novelty song that coincided with the moon landing. Out of that, he got a record that he released as his first record. He had an orchestra backing him up on that first record off the back of a novelty song. That never happens today. And so, I mean, we've been sliding down this slope for decades, that now AI is a new thing on that slope. But we've been sliding down this slope for decades. We're worried about musicians' jobs being taken, about, you know, film scoring. That's been going for a long time. The average person now can't tell whether something is auto-tuned, whether something is a real instrument or fake. My mum came to see me on a cruise ship to see a Beatles act perform. I was doing a Paul McCartney impersonation. And it had backing tracks. And I mentioned backing tracks to her afterwards, and she said, there weren't backing tracks. Where was the strings coming from? Oh, I guess you're right. You know, so we've been down that slope for a long time.
Yeah. Live music, Kelly. I was reading a story the other day about holograms in the concert business, and ABBA made $2 million last year, just their holograms. They weren't even actually in the building, and people were coming to watch their holograms on the stage and paying tickets. Do you see that as the future? I mean, if there was a Michael Jackson concert with a hologram, would Budweiser Gardens book something like that?
I mean, I'm never going to say never, but I don't think it's on the top of the list or what we're going out trying to fight and get. I think there is something really special between the connection that artists and musicians or performers have with the audience, and I don't think that's something that audience members get from a hologram. So maybe if you're a really big ABBA fan and that's the only way you're going to see them, you'll go and have that experience. But I think on a whole, people want that connection with the musician, you know, and I don't think we're ever going to lose that.
We've only got a couple of minutes left. Some final thoughts on the London music scene. How can people get involved for those that want to go out and support the London music scene? What should we do as a city to really make sure it continues to thrive? Kelly, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, you know, go out, listen to live music. There's a number of places that you can go that, you know, there's free music available, so it's not having to come to Budweiser Gardens. And it's in all aspects of our community and all, you know, Byron or Lambeth or wherever it might be. So get out and enjoy the music. You know, I think, as I mentioned earlier, if there are things that you're going to or different public spaces you're going to be in, how can music be a part of that, and how can we keep music at the forefront of the community? But in general, I'm excited for the London music scene and where we're going. And, you know, as you mentioned, you think we're on the cusp of something, and I agree with you. And I think there's a lot of great work being done on all aspects, and I'm really excited to see where we go in these next 5 years.
Jeremy, what do we need to do to keep it thriving?
Just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, those are great points. Go see live music. Musicians think about putting on shows in unorthodox places. think about synergy. I heard on the radio on the way here the issues the London Food Bank is having, which is not unique to London. It's across Ontario. Are there ways you can use music to support social change, social action? But I think there's just so much talent in this city and such a strong foundation that, as an example in the theater world, every time I see a cast announcement from a theater company, I don't recognize any of these people. And that's rare to find. Usually you find a somewhat incestuous scene where it's the same people over and over. London does not suffer from that one bit. Right. So go out, enjoy the scene that we're so fortunate and lucky to have in front of us.
Yeah. Mario, your thoughts?
I too am very optimistic. I've seen I've been around to see the music scene in London, part of it going back to the 80s, and it ebbs and flows. But I'm very optimistic. I think things are looking good. Keep doing what we're doing. I think London has always been a place of music. And I think, wearing the UNESCO badge now is a little momentum. Let's see where that takes us. Let's see how it affects individuals and organizations on the ground floor at the grassroots level. But I'm very optimistic. I think we do have world-class talent here in London.
Good. Any questions from any of you for these panelists while we have them here?
So when we talk about music in London, we're talking about a lot of players and a lot of stakeholders. And I'm curious as to the level of cooperation and collaboration among those various stakeholders and players.
I think this is a really exciting opportunity. I think there's an issue, and this is my bias as a lawyer coming in and wanting to make sure that things work from the front end. What happens is in the music industry, as things go wrong, as you have someone who doesn't pay you for work that you did, at an individual level, you chalk that up to experience and you say, okay, I won't work with that person again. The problem is that person might be very good with their business with other people. And so what you end up with is a kind of fractured scene where you get pockets and cliques, where you ask someone in that clique, oh, he's a great guy, but you ask someone from a different clique and they'll say, never work with him. I think the more bridges get burnt in a community, the less well the community functions. And so the opportunity here is, before things get set in stone, get in there and make sure bridges don't get burnt. Make sure everyone is pulling in the same direction. Make sure that you're all coming from a place where you see what this scene can be and you're pulling towards what it can be, instead of, am I going to get rich tonight on this one thing that we're doing? That's my own slant, is you've got to make sure everyone's business is working together so that you don't end up with those pockets.
Is there enough collaboration, Mario?
I suppose it depends on who you ask.
Right.
The proof will be in the pudding. There can be more. And I think that we do need to kind of come together and mesh collaboration. How do you force that? I don't know. But I like the don't burn the bridges. Let's build bridges. And we need to build bridges very much in a business-like model of vertical integration. So there may be an opportunity at some point where there's a pre-concert at the Bud Gardens before people come in to see Superstar A, where there's maybe 2 or 3 local bands who are playing before that. And that's the kind of bridge that we need to build, and would speak to it. But I'm sure you guys are working on that.
Of course.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add to this conversation, because in my opinion, as a music industry worker and been in different places, London does have a unique kind of situation, in particular due to its geography and size. So coming from Toronto, say, and this idea of fragmentation and cooperation, Toronto's just so big and so massive that it sort of cobbles together this sense of, and burnt bridges aren't such a big deal, because there's 1,000 other bridges. I found in London, though, that you come circling back to people very quickly. So it's a more sensitive community to that burning bridge kind of energy. So I just wanted to add that because I think, in my opinion, this is where I'm agreeing with pretty much everybody here. This is a real excellent avenue for development in London, is trying to first off repair some bridges that are broken and then building new bridges that form new relationships, which can lead to all kinds of different opportunities for the artists and for the consumers, the audience. So.
Yeah. Many heads really are better than one.
I
This industry.
I think, you might not see the effects of that in Toronto, but so Nashville's model, for example, it's got really strong structure in terms of the venues that you're performing in, the work that you're doing, and it functions kind of like farm teams, to use a sports analogy. In Toronto, a friend of mine was performing with Mirvish, and they left to go on tour, and the tour ended, and they came back, and they had lost the gig. Nashville, that doesn't happen. If it does, the person taking the gig is out. They're blackballed. There's got to be more respect. There's got to be less fear among musicians. And so even though you might not see the cracks as closely in a big place like Toronto, there's certainly more opportunity, I would say, just by the numbers game. But the cracks are still there, and it perpetuates and foments this kind of fright, which I think undermines the community. So I'm agreeing with you, but then also doubling down. I think London's opportunity is actually, I think, to be a thought leader in this and create a model for the rest of Canada.
Anything else? Yeah.
Maybe some of the historical ways of doing things are better than they are today. When I was in high school in the early 70s, every high school had multiple dances a year with a live band. And some of those bands went on to become big names. But the high school only had to pay a minimal token amount, cover the expenses. And then the music industry, the music union got involved and said they have to be part of the union. They have to be paid thousands of dollars, which high schools couldn't pay. And now high schools only have disc jockeys. So those venues where bands could get known and get experience have been lost. So maybe it would be worth going back to say, if you play at a high school, it's okay to have a token amount.
That's a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I think you're right. A lot of things that worked back then, I think, are becoming novel again. And there's almost like a nostalgia element. There was a time when, I think when I was coming through elementary school, it was really cool to have music videos playing. And you,
Play it at a local band because they
Absolutely.
started out, they weren't famous.
Absolutely. I think if you've got a TV screen at a dance, everyone stands there looking at the TV screen. I think having a band is a new novel thing again, and I think it might catch on more than you think.
Now it would be TikTok videos, and they'd all
Yeah.
be doing the dance from the TikTok video.
That frightens me.
Right. Thank you so much. Mario Cercelli, Jeremy Wright, Kelly Austin, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Appreciate your time.
As we move forward in our program, we are going to invite our opera singers back to the stage. And while they get situated, we're going to play a video that Mario has graciously shared with us that highlights the music industry in London.
London has always been a place of music. It started with Indigenous groups and the rhythm of their song and drum. It began to boil with Canada's first pop stars, the Lombardo brothers. It's been simmering ever since, with some of the best bands and musicians in the country.
Don't look back and wonder how this could have gone. Can't spend time here waiting for things to never come. Explore the light, explore the dark. Search for the
Some people say it's because of the water in the Thames River. Others say it's because London grew on the traditional land of Indigenous people, propelled by the rhythm that comes from their land. Whatever the reason, our city has given birth to some of the country's best musicians.
Fight for more, strive for it. Dreams can still be met. Explore the light, explore the dark. Search for the unknown, search for the unknown. Life is now, we live in it. We have it fast, don't blink an eye. Life is now, we live in it. We have it fast, don't blink an Believe in you, believe in me.
Musicians who sound great on any stage in the world.
Can be. Explore the light, explore the dark. Search for the unknown, search for the unknown. Life is
There's a story here, and it's worth preserving and telling and telling and retelling.